course, that's not what our purpose is. Our purpose is to sort of be here and inquire together into something that, I thought, what could we talk about? Now, frankly, the thing that I am most interested in us talking about is what Krishnamurti would call radical transformation, insight that leads to a pivotal realization that is fundamentally transformative. What he meant by that, what the transformation is, why it's pivotal and so on, we can kind of inquire into. So that's my primary interest, is for us to explore that. But before I even get there, I have been invited here by the Krishnamurti Educational Center of Canada. They pay for me to come and put me up and so on. In part because some of my scholarly work has been related to the study of Krishnamurti. And I've written some stuff on him. I've worked some articles and so on. And I also worked as a teacher at Krishnamurti School here for a while. So was David. That's where I first met Ralph many, many years ago. So in some sense, I suppose that gives me some, there's a rationale behind inviting me to come and talk. But I like Krishnamurti, what he has to say. So I will make references to him, and during the course of our weekend together, I'll periodically have some quotations by him that might relate to the general theme of our inquiry for this weekend. Now, we could inquire into many different things as starting points and so on, but I chose an odd title for this talk and really this theme of the retreat. Why not this is what I entitled it. When I mentioned it to Ralph, he said to me, "Are you sure you're going to use that title? Why not this? Do you want to explain it a bit more?" And I said, "Well, if I do that, then I won't have anything to say in my talk. Why don't I go into it?" And those who kind of maybe know what I'm kind of hinting at will sort of appreciate the title to some extent. So I hope that those of you who do show up have a kind of an appreciation. I want to just use that as a way to, as a sort of a springboard to run and talk a little about how we could even understand that question, why not this? I guess before I go into saying that, let me even just say that even though I've done scholarly work on Krishnamurti, and even though I may make some references to some quotes by him, and we use that, I'm not in any way trying to claim to be some kind of an authority when it comes to interpreting Krishnamurti's thought, because I respect his own injunctions about that, in which he said, look, I don't think anybody should be an authoritative interpreter of my teachings. People can read them for themselves and make their own decisions and so on. Plus, he didn't want to be really regarded as any kind of a guru that people followed and so on. The truth to which he was pointing us to, the way I understand it, is that he was pointing us to the discovery of truth for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that's the same sort of spirit in which I would like our session today, as well as our process of inquiry this weekend, to be. I'm here by good fortune and invitation. I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to share with everyone. But I hope that you all feel free to share openly and willingly. And I know that many of you do, because you've been here before. So I just want to remind us of that perspective. So, all right. So this title, like, what? So what should we talk about? Why not this? And at the very core, honestly, to me, let me just come up and say something. This is it. That's why. Why not this? Right? But then, what does that mean? This is it. Right? So, I'm confessing my position. This, what could it mean? I hope we can inquire. I think we'll dedicate some time to inquire into what that word, this, could mean. I suppose I could have said, why not that? But that seems a bit remote. It's not bad. Could be that. But these, This seemed righter to me. And in some ways, it's because if you think about traditions that are often pointing us to this, it seems as if we as human beings often tend to ignore this. So my question is a rhetorical question: why not this? Why is it that we as human beings often tend to not want this? We seem in some sense to always move away from this. And if you read the teachings of many great teachers, they often point us repeatedly to this. They may use a different word. Someone would say the now, someone would say the here and now. In Buddhism, they talk about, you could almost say, the suchness. Right? The suchness is to some extent pointing to the thisness of things. That, they often say, is the height of a realized state of being. There's a story that when the Buddha, before he was a Buddha, he meditated and got enlightened and so on, then he was like, oh, okay, I'm enlightened, or I'm non-enlightened. He said, who should I talk about this with? And he decided to go and talk to some buddies of his that he had meditated intensely with, and had, in some sense, abandoned him when he chose a slightly more moderate path. And he kind of intuited where they were, and he headed in that direction. So when he got there, they didn't want to talk to him initially, but they said, oh, that guy, he kind of whipped out and started eating food and all this stuff instead of practicing hard asceticism. But once he came closer, they sort of felt compelled to listen to him. It seemed like he seemed a little different, and when he began speaking, they felt compelled to listen. And at first they called him by, I don't know, I guess his name, like Siddhartha or whatever. And he said, please do not call me that, call me the Tathagata. And that word is something that people have often wondered what it could mean. Because in Sanskrit, if you study Sanskrit, it has a bit of a problematic sense. That, or this, is sometimes tatha, or the tathata, the suchness is the tathata. But agata, there's a long A issue. It could mean one who has come to this, one who has come to the suchness, agata, or one who has gone to the suchness, gata, gone. But so at any rate, the Tathagata says, call me someone who has arrived at the suchness, someone who has arrived at this, the thisness of things, right? That's what he asked to be called. Now, eventually they called him the Buddha and so on to give this title. And that, in some sense, is what I'm trying to point to. Our focus can be on this, the thisness. He's saying, I arrived here, that's what makes me somehow special or different. He wasn't saying that in his form, but to some extent, he was emphasizing the importance of arriving at this. That's what the enlightened state of mind, in some sense, might be that he pointed to. That's what I'd like to ask. I'd like us to find out if that is true or not, right? Is it true that the this is something that gives us, endows us, allows us to really be what people seem to think is a valuable place to be psychologically, to awaken to this? Why not this? Because we are asleep to this? So those are the kinds of questions I'd like to ask. And you might say, well, that seems so absurd, because this is this, it's right here. And actually, if you were to say that, I would say you're quite right. This is this, and it's all fine. Yet, for some reason, human beings, it seems, often avoid this. And we avoid this in many ways. We avoid this by somehow living in the past or living in the future. We dream, imagine. Even when it comes to the so-called state of enlightenment or realization, we aren't content that this might be it. This might be all there is. we somehow feel that no, that might be somehow more than this. And I'm not saying that it isn't. I'd like us to have that question, that open question to inquire. Is this all there is? Is there a song like that? Oh, it's that all there is, sorry. Or is there something more than this? Or is the this that we appreciate or understand or perceive somehow less than it could be or ought to be or might be? In other words, the this that we experience as individuals, is that not enough of this? Is there more to this than this that we are in fact experiencing? I mean, those are questions that are worth inquiring into, right? Now it's easy to, like, from our readings and our practices and backgrounds, you might say, no, actually, if you were awakened the way the Buddha is or something, this is rather different than what I'm experiencing right now, because I'm not enlightened, and the Buddha was. Krishnamurti's this must have certainly been different than my this. Was it? Is it? I'd like us to explore that, right? So I think I think these questions are worthwhile asking. Why? I don't know. I do. Now, it turns out that I'm not the only one who seems to find these things terribly interesting. I hope you do. I think you do. I'd like us to refocus our interest in it, hopefully. If you find it uninteresting, I apologize. But you know, if you think about it, Buddhism, all of Buddhism, the whole Buddhist world, is actually interested in that particular goal. I mean, true, Buddhists end up being devotional and worship Buddhas and so on and so forth, but at the core, the goal of Buddhism is to be a Buddha. It's not to worship the Buddha, it's not to venerate or something, it's really to become, to awaken to your Buddha nature. So, you know, the 500 plus million Buddhists or whoever, how many there are in the world, that's their interest. Their actual core interest at some level is that. Of the nearly 1 billion Hindus in the world, if you think about it, Hindus worship gods and they go to temples and pilgrimages and so on. Yet for them, if you, like, sometimes in a simplification of the goals of Hinduism, one of the goals they say that all people have, these aren't goals of Hindus, but they would say these are the goals that all human beings kind of strive for. One is to try to live a meaningful life. A life that maybe has, you know, you ask yourself, how do I live well? What is a good life? What is a life that's righteous, maybe? You know, I don't want to be living a life that's tawdry and mediocre, a life that really has, ultimately, you know, so what is meaningfulness? What is righteousness? What is a moral, ethical, proper, good life? That goal is sometimes called dharma. That's not the goal of moksha. It's often mistaken. People think, oh, liberation, that goal is the goal of righteousness. This is not. If you're interested in that, it may be secondary and so on. We will not be talking about the goal of goodness and the goal of righteousness and the goal of even meaningfulness. We will not actually be talking much about, at least as far as I'm concerned. I won't be talking, you can talk about whatever you feel like talking about. I will certainly not be talking about anything dealing with any kind of moral sensibility and so on. In fact, this that I would like to point to for myself, point us to, is that which in some respects cannot be known. Anyhow, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So that goal of wanting to live a good, moral, righteous, meaningful life is a valid pursuit, and it is regarded as the pursuit of dharma in Hinduism, to use that word. Then there's the pursuit of pleasure, joy. We all want, you know, whether it's sexual pleasure, the joy, pleasure of eating fine food, drinking wine, hanging out with good friends, company, like that is completely valid and reasonable according to the Hindus. That is the goal of kama, the path of joy and pleasure. I'm not going to be talking about that. Yeah, pleasure, sure. I mean, I know some things about pleasure, that, you know, and so on, but no, that's not our focus. Pleasure may be incidental, but this thing that we're focusing on, or what I'd like us to focus on, is not related to that, the pursuit of pleasure and joy and happiness even. Then there's the pursuit of what they call, let's say, achievement, attainment. There's something in us that, if I was a musician, there's something in me that wants to be a better musician. I like to play my guitar better or piano better or something. If I was an athlete, there's something in me that makes me want to bring out from myself, so something better. I want to ride my bike faster or longer or jump higher. Or if I'm making money, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be really rich and, the stock market. There's something in us that is a movement towards growth, towards empowerment, towards self-empowerment, and that's called artha. It has many different, so the idea of pursuit, I'm not going to be talking about that. In fact, if you know how to make money, I'd like to talk to you, and maybe that would be something useful that I could learn. So these pursuits, the pursuit of power, achievement, attainment, self-perfection, the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of righteousness, these are different goals. These are valid goals. These are not the goals that is held in highest regard in the Hindu tradition. That is the goal of liberation, moksha. That's what I want to talk about. And I've purposely talked about it because I think people often tend to think that the pursuit of moksha gives you those other three. If they did, they just say, go for moksha, don't go for... No, you want this other stuff, go for them. They are different objectives in life. Moksha is the term that is akin to nirvana, and there are differences between what the Hindus say and the Buddhists and stuff academically. But the idea is liberation. It's a kind of a quality of freedom. Much from the Sanskrit, to release, to leave behind. So what am I leaving behind? What is it that after you're telling me all of this stuff, like, I pursued righteousness, I pursued pleasure, and I've gone after attainment and so on, and now you're saying there's something else. And the Hindus, 900 million, billion, right? They value that the highest. Right? So, however many millions of Buddhists there are, however many millions of Hindus there are, they all value this pursuit of this thing. But what is this thing? So-called release, this so-called freedom, this sort of self-realization, by the different names that it is called, the snuffing out, nirvana, the extinguishing. Extinguishing of what? Delusion, karma. Let's ask ourselves, because sometimes we just take the word to mean something, and it's like, I might call it, I think it may be a movement away from this. Right? It's the snuffing out of that which moves us away from this. Or does it? So this we can explore. When I say, why not this, I'm asking the question, is this not enough? Is this all there is? Is this enough? And so on. So the why not this, let's see, we can explore that. What might this mean? And it's valuable. What I'm saying is coming to the thisness is valuable, valued by many people in many different cultures. Then there's another way we can take that question. That was my way of playing on it, which is, why not this? And by this I was trying to refer back to the ancient Upanishadic sages. So way back in about 500 BCE or earlier, there were Indian wise men, sages, rishis, who wrote texts called the Upanishads. And somewhere in there, there's a reference to the idea of the thing that you are seeking is not this. In Sanskrit, they don't have quotation marks. The way they try to say something in quotation marks is by using the word iti at the end of something. So there's a sentence and then there's iti at the end of it. It means that was in quotation marks. That's something that somebody said. So iti is anything. So blah 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 iti, blah 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 iti. So what the sages said is na iti, not this, or not that. But in Sanskrit, those na iti gets fused together and becomes neti. So neti neti means not this, not this, or not this, not that. That is a crucial, it's like a via negativa. That is a crucial phrase. It's often used in the circles of non-dual spirituality and, Indian sage, many, many centuries, almost 1,000 years after the Upanishadic sage, his name was Shankara. He used this a lot. He ran with it. He says, Neti, the path to knowledge is not this, not this. I'm talking about this, and like now, okay, those Upanishadic sages and Shankara are saying not this, not this. So it's like, so I said, why not this? Why not this? Right? So I'm trying to play with those two notions. Well, what did they mean when they said not this? Because they're saying the way to truth, this via negativa, is not this. But then the others are saying it is this. So why not this? Why not this? What is it? Right? Maybe they're pointing to slightly different things, or are they? Right? Now, to some extent, the criticism, the not this via negativa, and some of you probably already know that. I know what he's talking about. There's the this, which is direct perception of the suchness and so on. And the not this is any ideas that I have about it. Ideas of the absolute, ideas of myself, thought-constructed reality. To some extent, that's it. We know that. We've read Krishnamurti, we've read Sargadatta, we've read Eckhart Tolle, we've read all these guys, Krishnamurti. We know thought is the culprit. And, it's like, oh, this? Yeah. And not the thought constructed this. The thought, yeah, that's what they were saying. Not the thought constructed I, not the thought constructed tree, not the thought constructed you and your reality and so on. Not this, not this. Anything you have to say about the absolute, about Brahman, about God, is not true. Not this. That's what they were getting at when they said neti, neti. Not this, not this. So we should explore that a little bit as well. And part of our retreat, we can focus on the notion of how do we get caught up in ideas that we need to then perhaps apply the not this to, and is there something else to which we can apply the this to? So that's part of what I think we can play with a little bit in our discussions and our focus, just to see what you're really discovering, not from theoretical readings and so on, but moment to moment, like, hey, you know what happened to me? I just thought this for a moment, I clung to it, and I let go. We could talk about some of those ideas, actually existentially, experientially in our retreat, right? Rather than go off into abstractions about what it's supposed to be and so on. Because I think if we do that, it may help us to somehow come to a clearer understanding of how mind functions and how it can sometimes snare us in ways that prevent us from seeing with the immediacy this or not this, whatever is actually better to see. So there's that. So there's those two elements that we can spend some time exploring, and that's why I kind of wanted to use that title to sort of bring this forward. Now I want to problematize it even further, because I love doing that a little bit. So is there only this and not this? There's this, and then there's all the ideas about this which are not this, we should reject, and so on. That's the essence of most non-dual teachings. I'd like to deconstruct that a little bit, Can there ever be anything that is not this? I would like to ask. Like, why should I discard those ideas of the absolute and the self, the particularizing mind, the dividing, conditioning mind? What is that? Where does that sit in this? Right? Why must I discard that for this? What makes that then different from this? Is it inappropriate? Is it wrong? Is it not part of this? Then in what sense is that in any way part of some wholeness that you might look for? And do you really care about? Maybe wholeness is not the answer. It's all about oneness and so on. I'd like to inquire into whether oneness is the thing. Everybody talks about oneness. Yeah, I'm one with the absolute. When thought stops, I become one with everything. And it's my thinking mind that separates the particular of you and me, and Muslims and Christians, and this and that. I label and I divide. And I want to ask whether that dividing mind, the separating mind, the conditioned mind, the mind that is not one, but many, is in any way different from or apart from this. Or is the very doing of that, doing something to this, or the this acting in a particular way, that is part of its fascinating, extraordinary creativity. Right? Because it's too simple to discard this for that, or this. I mean, you know, I wonder, and I genuinely want us to inquire into that. Is there anything but this? And how big is this? What is not in this that I can actually reject the way those Upanishadic sages said, not this, not this. What Krishnamurti says, don't, you know, let's question Krishnamurti. Let's ask if what he's saying, then when we read him, let's see if, is that what he's really saying? Is he saying discard this, discard these ideas, these thought-constructed ideas, for another kind of reality that is apart from that? Right? Because I'm not at all convinced that he does, or any of the great teachers actually say that. I think that's a way of us misunderstanding. That's what I think. Feel free